Please be seated. Not all vineyards work the same way. Neither do all fairs. When I was a kid, my family would always go to the Maryland State Fair. Mom would relive her childhood looking at the cattle and horses in the Cow Palace. Dad would explore the food options. The food was categorized as God intended by what animal it came from. My brother and I would beg to go on midway rides, and the family would all come together to experience our favorite fair offering, the exhibit of misshapen produce called vegetable oddities. We were that kind of family. But yesterday and the day before, I went to a different kind of fair, the Common Ground Country Fair in Unity, Maine. I'm not making up the name of the town. They did have exhibitions and ribbons for all manner of produce, flowers, herbs, and livestock. There was also a thriving trade in those things. You could buy organic produce or a chicken if you wanted to. There was no midway, however. There were lectures and demonstrations of the skills of rural living, ecology, and sustainability. For entertainment, instead of a big evening show from a second-tier country artist or a washed-up rock band, there were multiple simultaneous roots music offerings at venues all over the fairgrounds. The entertainment would go on all day. You could meet environmental activists and writers, see carpenters and blacksmiths demonstrating their trades, you could buy arts, crafts, and tools, have a tintype portrait made, learn to contra dance, ride classic trains, and even learn how to make your own coffin for those who like to plan ahead. Unlike every other event of its size I have attended, there was something for everyone. Everyone was friendly. I saw not one man, woman, or child in a bad mood. It was as though we had all found our places together. And I was amazed at the peacefulness, joy, and unself-conscious expression on display. But my friend pointed out that we were also looking at a collection of skill as astonishing for its depth as its diversity. God blesses us abundantly in our individual lives, yes, but in a truly spectacular way that we can only see when we gather to realize it and open our hearts and minds and eyes to see it. Sometimes we need to get into the right frame of mind, and today's parable helps us understand this. God sets out to include all of us in the enterprise of building up the kingdom of heaven. God blesses us abundantly as individuals, but not because we all do the same thing. Quite the opposite. The parable is phrased in the terms of different duration of labor, but it works just as well to think of the diversity of kinds of labor. Some jobs are harder than others. Jesus was honest about that. But all is necessary. All labor has its place. And similarly, the human economy compensates different work at different rates and not always fairly. But God's blessings transcend economics. God calls some to be martyrs, some to be makers, some to think, and some to play. Some of the vocations God calls us to are dirty, painful, dangerous, and exhausting. Some of them are done mostly or entirely out of the public eye. And yet they are all valuable because God has called us to do them. Just as important as the sort of work is the venue. There are many places, many vineyards where we can choose to work, where we can make an investment of our time and effort. But only in God's vineyard can we expect to be loved unconditionally and therefore treated well. While the secular world ensures that some of the hardest working people are also the poorest, in God's vineyard, the kingdom of heaven, God chooses how we will be rewarded, and God is generous to each of us. But that generosity can be mysterious. God's ways are very different from the ways of the world, very different from all we are accustomed to, and so they can be perplexing or even seem to us unfair, but they're really just unfamiliar. And God is better than fair. God blesses us abundantly even when we think we deserve less. God's generosity is also mysterious in how it reaches us. In the parable, it is easy to overlook the detail that rather than paying the laborers directly, the vineyard owner trusts his manager to distribute the wages. God's blessings usually come to us not in theophanies, that is, overtly supernatural experiences or encounters, but rather through other servants of God who are functioning in the roles God has called them to. Yet, that does not mean that God is distant from us, nor that we are prevented from having a relationship directly with God. That happens in the parable too. The dissatisfied laborers grumble to the landowner, and they even get a response from him, a reminder of his authority, but also of his choice to use that authority with both the justice of fair wages and the beneficence of generosity. For the laborers who worked only a short time need to feed their families just as much as those who worked all day, and God loves them all. Grumbling in and of itself is not wrong, especially if we share our grievances with God and listen to the answers. But our grumblings can be a distraction from what God is doing for us and all around us. God is better to us than the world can ever be. God blesses us with individual callings that together expand the presence of heaven on earth, push out the boundaries of the vineyard. And God blesses us with the relationships and understanding that give us joy and satisfaction when we do our best to fulfill our callings. The more we embrace our callings, and the sooner we set aside our notions of what God ought to do, the sooner we can experience and understand the thrilling diversity and abundance that God offers to us, and join the fellow revelers in the vineyard, which can look an awful lot like the fair. Amen.